Welcome to the Big Fat Real Estate Checks podcast with Marco Kozlowski, where we help investors like you get the knowledge and skills you need to replace your JOB with passive cash flow for life.
Hey, Marco here. I really wanted to share with you our earlier podcasts that we created. Now, our mics were not the best, but the content was really strong, and I know you will learn a lot. We had an absolute blast recording this, and I know you're absolutely going to love it as much as we loved recording it. This extremely content-rich information will not only give you the edge in your real estate investing business, but in everyday life. Enjoy. Welcome back. This episode, we're going to discuss what is a good deal. Can't tell you how many times on Facebook people reach out to me and say, I have a deal. Can I get funded on this deal? I have a great deal. And it actually used to irritate me. It doesn't anymore because I realize that most people that are in need of changing their lives, who are trying to do this on their own, believe whatever is being advertised and don't recognize what a good deal is and what not a good deal is. So this whole episode is really to discuss those things and what to look out for and understand that just because it looks like a good deal doesn't mean it is a good deal. So let's have those discussions. Francesco, would you like to go first?
Actually, I would like to go first.
Well, there you go.
Thank you.
That's unusual.
That's what I was going to say. What's the last thing you said? No. I'm never going to say no. You
That's
know
really
that.
weird.
That's why you probably asked me. Frankie will take it. It's like the Mikey commercial with cereal. Give it to Mikey. He'll eat it. Give it to Frank. He'll take first.
Again, this is probably an 80s commercial. So only four of you.
It is an 80s
really
commercial.
Got the reference.
It's beyond you. Yeah. But you know what? What is a good deal? And actually, sometimes what happens is the seller will actually convince you or try to convince you that it is a good deal. I had a call this morning that the broker was on and the seller came on and I said, listen, I go, we wanted certain conditions before we buy it, right? And that was the whole thing, to make it a good deal. And they said, well, this is a 17 cap, right? And I was like, well, listen, I don't know how you operate your own business and you may operate it one way, but we operate another one because I don't want to get calls at night. I don't want shit hitting the fan. And I told them, politely, the expenses that you reported are not sustainable. They're not realistic based on our experience. So he's pitching it and really pitching it as a 17 cap, but it's not even close to it.
It might say pro forma, where it could make this.
Oh, it did say pro forma.
Yeah.
So the income we verified. That's not the problem. The income was verified.
Right.
We matched up the
the
bank statements. The income was there. It was the expenses that were.
Yeah, that's where it usually is played, right?
It's the expenses that he was playing. I was like, no, it is what it is. I changed the boiler. I did this. I did that. That granted, he did. But there's still maintenance, and still in terms of the operation for the management, there's still things that he doesn't have disclosed there,
like no management fees, for example. Someone is taking care of the property themselves, so there has to be a management fee in there, and a real management fee, not like 3%, 2%, or $500 a month. You take a look at some of these things. Well, they put, it's a 56 unit apartment building, and they have management $500 a month. No one's going to work for $500 to manage the place. Oh, well, there's someone inside that collects the rent, and well, what if they die or they leave? Like, it works now, maybe, but that's not a real expense. We're not nickeling and diming. We're trying to find the actual real expense, and it's going to be around 10% of the gross.
And if it's less, great for you, but you got to plan that way.
But if you buy it with 10% of gross and you actually end up paying 7%, you're saved 3%. So it goes into your pocket. Anyway, continue.
So on that one, it was exactly that. He didn't have management, not because he neglected to put it down. It's because he was management. So it's a smaller property, and he lives there with his wife. So he would be the manager. And he said, no. So when I approached him, I said, hey, listen, we got to put management in there because I'm not in the business of management, which I'm not. I'm in the business of buying real estate cash flow.
They're not going to live there? You're not going to live there
and
collect rents?
Actually, I don't even know where the hell it was, to be honest with you.
You don't want to move there and have a new place?
No, I don't want to move there. I'm very comfortable where I am. Well, I'm not very comfortable. I don't like the cold, but I'm very comfortable in my own home, thank you. So I'm not looking for a new place. But so it's not that he neglected to put in management expenses. And this is the way he said. He had an accent. I don't know where he's from, the Ukraine or something. He goes, I take money. He goes, I put some in my pocket to live and buy food, and the rest goes in the bank. And And for him, that's what his operations were. And I go, but that's not our model. And I go, based on our experience, I didn't want to insult the guy, but based on our experience, his expenses are not realistic because I'm not looking to move there, take some cash from the tenants, put it in my pocket when I need to go buy cereal and shit, and pay for my car or whatever. That's just not the model we're doing. So from his perspective, he thinks I'm out to lunch. He's like, it's a 17 cap. What more do you want? All right. He goes, you're not going to find this. No. I go, well, it's not really. Yeah. And people, and he's, again, persistence and convincing. And even the broker was agreeing.
Convinced.
Yeah.
So it's easily to get into that trap where someone would think it's a deal. It makes sense.
But sometimes it's also the son that doesn't understand how to do their own math. Like I had a deal that I was looking at, and I'm taking the numbers. It was like 900,000 gross, and the asking was like 3.6 million. And I'm like, it's a pretty shitty deal. And so I tell him that. And he's like, well, we calculated this is about a 20% return in your first year. I'm like, 20% return. 900 divided by 36 is 25. That's 4. That's 25% return on gross. So if your net is in the 20s, that means that you have what, $200,000 worth of expenses. So let's take our formula. 10% for management, that's 90 grand. 10% for maintenance, another 90 grand. That's 180. That's your 200 right there. Yeah. And you have
taxes.
Taxes.
What about insurance? What about the other shit?
Yeah.
What about utilities? If there are utilities, you gotta have a small utility bill as the properties
That's
get bigger,
right.
and outside light security measures.
But if you don't know better, you just might take their word for it and buy it, and then just realize that you're upside down.
Yeah.
So you have to know what you have to know everything that you can about the property and understand that you can trust but verify. Like
Yep.
Well, what you just said, Marco, what you just said right now, people are advertising that way. They're giving you the cap on the gross. So you got to be careful when you're reading the OM or the brochure or whatever it is.
The flyer.
The flyer. And if it says, a 25 cap on gross, and what sometimes they do is a cash on cash.
Yeah.
Right? They just assume. And they do the calculations. It's already in there. They assume you're going to get
a mortgage,
75% mortgage. They do the interest rate and everything, and they know what your cash in will be, that 20% or 25%. And they do it. It's like, and then they'll show 27% return. That's your cash on cash.
they'll
return,
include the capital on the mortgage,
which is a total different story than
some even include appreciation.
Yeah.
They'll say, well, you're going to make 3% a year, 4% a year in appreciation. How do you know the future? Like, if that's the case, like, why aren't you keeping it?
Right.
So it could be a deal, but it's not the deal that they're advertising the deal that they're pitching or the deal that they really think in their hearts. It's a 27. This guy's, I'll tell you, he doesn't want to buy my property. Screw him. It's a 17% cap.
Let's talk about the major traps to recognize if it's a good deal or a bad deal. So first of all, is it pro forma, which we've discussed in a previous episode. If it's pro forma, forget it. It's garbage. Now, some of you might think, well, that, Marco, you're stupid, because you can get it up to there. Well, yes, you could get it up to there, but that would take risk and time and usually capital. I want to buy on what it is today. So I don't buy on the future. I don't buy Apple stock for what it's going to be in a year from now. I buy Apple stock what it is today, if I were to buy Apple stock.
And don't get confused by, you can't buy a property that has pro forma numbers. It's what are you paying for it today? And if you're paying for it today, what it's worth today, and that you are open to putting the capital improvements necessary to get it to pro forma, because that's going to be a return for you, that's fine. That's a real estate strategy. That's called optimization, and you can do that. But don't buy the property or purchase price based on the future value that you're going to get, because that's where you're going to get hurt, and that's going to hurt a lot.
That's a very good distinction. Thank you. I wasn't clear on that. So you're right. Make sure that you're buying on today's numbers, and again, below wholesale. And there's a process to getting it there. Good deals are created; they're not found. If you find a 17 cap online, it's most likely not a 17 cap. It's most likely a 10 cap that has a whole lot of expenses that have been removed, which we're going to get into in a second. But so pro forma, big red flag. Another sort of red flag is, are all the expenses really there? Are they accounting for a management expense, a real management expense of around 10%? Are they have a maintenance expense, thank you, of at least 10%? Is the insurance actually there? I've seen with agents' fancy brochures, and there's no insurance or even taxes. They forgot to pay the property taxes. If you don't pay property taxes, you lose the property. You got to pay the property taxes. Make sure that those 4 major expenses and utilities, make sure that it's a reasonable expense. If you're paying, if it's a multifamily and there's 50 tenants in there and you're paying the power or the water bill can't be, or the power bill can't be $500 a month. They'll underreport those expenses, and it will totally skew the actual return that you're going to be getting, because we want to buy this from a hands-off perspective, not an owner operation perspective. So make sure those expenses are actually there. And if you take the income, the actual income that is non-pro forma, the actual income, and if it's 100% occupied, again, you can't use that. I would adjust it to around 92%. That would be fair. So if it's 95% occupied, take away 3%. If it's 80% occupied, leave it the way it is. Deduct the actual expenses that should be there based on the utilities and everything else, and that should give you your actual net income. And from there, see what the market cap rate is for that area, and see if it's actually below market or at market. And then your job, which is not going to be on this podcast or this video or whatever media that you're watching this through, because we're broadcasting through multiple channels. Is this at the right discount in order for you to protect the investors that are around you?
And what other things not to get blinded by these shiny objects that can show up on an OM. Seller financing available.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Assumable loan. All these things are tools that you can use eventually, but it's if they're putting it out there, everybody prefers to have cash now than have cash later in general, for the most part. Usually.
Yeah.
There are exceptions, but for the most part, especially when you're working on the smaller properties. So if they're putting this out there, is because they know that the property is overpriced and they want to help you get into it at a smaller cash amount, which is probably what most people's issue is not finding enough cash to get into the deal. So be careful with that. It's not because they're offering it that it means it's a good deal.
Marco, you were talking about pitfalls. We were talking about where people use the gross as for their cap or the cash on cash. Actually, you mentioned the utilities. And I just found this recently. One of them was trying to pull, I don't know if they were trying to pull a fast one, but what they did is they said that the tenants pay utilities. But what in fact they did on their rent roll, if someone was paying $500 and the utilities, they had some kind of a RUBS in place and they paid an extra $100.
Explain what RUBS is, just for those who don't know what that is.
It's basically...
Because it sounds creepy when you say it.
It's not the rub when you have a bad back and with a cream or anything like that, but RUBS is just...
put the cream in there, didn't you? It's about the cream.
It's a shared utility agreement where basically there's 1 meter, okay, for the whole community or for the whole complex.
Which the owner gets the bill.
The owner gets the bill, but it's shared equally. And this is in the lease agreement, so there's no surprise. And it's shared equally amongst the tenants that are there. Okay, so they share it equally, so each month, and that can fluctuate each month as well too, right? Based on water consumption, based on electricity consumption. So what this individual did, and this is common, I've seen it a few times now, and you got to be really careful when you're looking at it, is if the rent roll shows $700 and they had a RUBS in place, so they would show $700, but out of that $700, only $500 is really the rent. So they would show $700 a month times whatever, 30 units. So their revenue seems higher, and they say, and the tenants pay utilities, which is not lying. They're not lying. They are paying utilities, but the rent is clearly not $700.
And they're hiding the utility bill. So you have to be careful of those traps as well. So understand that you have to really look into what someone is doing. They're selling the property. Understand that they're selling the property. So these are salesmen that are presenting you something, and it's on the buyer to do their due diligence to see if this actually makes sense. It's not on the agent or the seller. If I want to put my property up for $100 million, there's no law that says that I can't.
That's right.
I can sell it for whatever the hell I want. I just need the one guy or the one lady or the shim that wants to pay a lot more for the property because of whatever, whatever the circumstances would be. So understand that the onus is on us as the buyer to sniff out the bullshit. And it's mostly bullshit, but they're not necessarily doing it intentionally either. Most agents, if they're putting a flyer together or some sort of sales piece or an OM, an offering a memorandum, they're just going off of what will sell best, what will look sexiest. And in some cases, there are a lot of people that want to buy a property and be the owner operator. So they're happy to go into the property and manage the tenants and make $150,000 a year and manage tenants because they had a job that was paying them $50,000 a year and that they hated, and now they're going to go into this position and be a landlord and make 150. So it makes sense because they have the credit, maybe some cash, and that's the kind of buyer that they want to attract.
And that's interesting because it just means that a good deal is really relative to you, and a good deal for one person may not be a good deal for another, and vice versa. So it really depends on, if you want to be an owner, operator, or a manager, then some deals might be more for you because the return will be different. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of the way we do it, which is
freedom,
we want to be free, have our time, and hands off as much as possible with systems in place. A deal that requires someone to be there to be able to make a return is not for us.
Yeah, the only way that I want to make money is if I'm not involved. I'll be involved to put it together
until closing,
and then I'm done.
Yeah.
I'll be involved to maintain and manage the property a little bit, but I have those people in place, like Brent. For me, he's the person that manages the portfolio. So when there's a problem, they talk to him. And if there's a problem that he can't handle, then he talks to me. So I have one person that I get to talk to, and he deals with his position that's what he's paid for, is to handle all the things that need to be handled. And he has an assistant that helps him with that. So that's just how I structured, because I have enough assets to be able to support that.
Yes.
At first, I have to do everything, which is fine. And then as soon as you have the right amount of beans to be able to take care of things, then you have a lot more freedom at that point. But again, a deal can be relative. I know some people that love 7 caps.
Yeah.
I won't touch anything unless it's a 15. So everyone has a different level of risk tolerance. And a deal is different for everyone. But understand that, look at the real numbers as they are. Make sure that it's not the nut fluff numbers.
That's right.
That is just the jazz finger number that is on either LoopNet or Craigslist or any of the other platforms where there's property. Make sure that you really understand that what's being offered is not always what the reality is.
And sorry, go ahead.
Nope.
And don't get seduced by shiny words like owner financing, seller financing.
Focus on price first, and then go into terms later.
Correct.
Which
could be another topic.
Which is another topic. Yeah. ADT, assets at discount first, and then terms. And that's that.
Yeah.
So hopefully this was informative, and make sure you know if it's a good deal and a really good deal. Know it's a good deal versus think it's a good deal. Very important. See
It's
you on
the
next
foundation.
episode.
Yeah.
It is.
If you like this episode of Big Fat Real Estate Checks, then show some love by leaving a comment and a good rating. Also, as a thank you for tuning in today, we've got a special free gift. The journey to passive cash flow for a life starts by finding deals, and it's easier than you think. Simply go to getdealsbytuesday.com, enter your email address, and we'll send you a free quick start course called Deals by Tuesday. Even if it's 11 p.m. Monday night, this course will show you how to find discounted real estate deals by Tuesday. It's that fast and simple. Go to getdealsbytuesday.com and start your journey toward life-changing cash flow today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.